Hello, everyone. Welcome to another talk in the Central European Talks series. I am Filip Martin Svibovec, the Croatian Doctoral Research Fellow at the World Institute, and I'm currently part of the WORF Alumni Network. The topic of my talk is Nikolai Berdyaev on freedom and responsibility. So, first off, when we talk about freedom, it is important to note that man is at the center of freedom and that the fundamental problem of philosophy is the problem of man, as Berdyaev says in his philosophical world outlook. He also says that at the center of his philosophical creativity is situated the problem of man, and that therefore his philosophy is to an utmost extent anthropologic, and that to posit the problem of man means at the same time posit the problem of freedom, of creativity, person, spirit, and history. Therefore, he has chiefly concerned himself with the philosophy of religion, philosophy of history, social philosophy, and ethics. Furthermore, the problem of man relates to the problem of freedom, which is in essence that man is a break in the world of nature, and that he cannot be contained within it. That also means that man wants to be free by default. He wants freedom because he is a break in the world. He cannot be content with just living in the world, being being locked up or chained up in necessities, in the world of objects, in something that just enslaves him. He wants to be free, free from everything, literally free. And to examine that problem of freedom, we need to examine a brief history of the term of freedom. The term freedom is a concept developed in a Christian Western ambience, with roots in the classical Greek and Roman ethics and Christian biblical tradition. Because of that, uh, we have the notion of freedom that we have today. So, for the Greek culture, freedom was political and ethical. That means if they were free to choose to express themselves politically as citizens of the Greek city, and they were free as regards in the free will and free decision making, which later resulted in the argument of the Middle Ages by Thomas Aquinas and St. Augustine about the liberum arbitrium, or free choice or free judgment. While later, in the industrial era, humans have developed a concept of inner or outer freedom. And then with the French Revolution, and with further developing the concept of what it is to mean to be free, the concept of liberty was developed. To be free, to be liberated from slavery, to be to be just liberated, and to be a free man. And then the modern notion of freedom, as we today discuss freedom, is something more of an abstract freedom, freedom from everything, freedom from being free, freedom from not doing anything, freedom to do anything we want, freedom to devise our time as we want, freedom to schedule our time as we see fit, freedom to do things freely. And in regards to that abstract freedom, and in regards to this sense of absolute freedom, we need to make a distinction between ethics and morality. Ethics, as a reflection upon the nature of a moral action or a moral situation, like something that we already have, and we are reflecting on our action as an individual. And morality, which comes from the Latin term of custom, as a mode of correct behavior and good action in regard to following the established rules. That means that freedom and morality are two separate things, which are often misplaced in today's discussions. Which means that ethics is a reflection upon morality, and morality is a code of behavior, and thus follows that freedom is not just allowing any arbitrariness. Freedom is, in its very nature, a moral freedom, that is, allowing one's own human, correct, morally responsible action. But as probably you can well, as you see this definition, you're thinking, yes, that is correct. This definition of freedom is by its nature a moral freedom. But in regards to morality, is freedom subject to a mode of correct behavior and good action? Is that really freedom? Are we free when we follow the established rules? In essence, And in an attempt to answer that question, the essence of spirit is freedom. Now, as Hegel says, this is freedom. For I am dependent, my being is referred to something else which I am not. I cannot exist independently of something external. I am free. On the contrary, and my existence depends on myself. By that he means that in self-consciousness, these are merged as one. For I, for the spirit knows itself. So the essence of being spiritually free is being as one, as the spirit is one. Now that is a biblical term. Oneness of spirit, this this experience of freedom which is ungrounded, which is beyond some kind of moral measure, beyond good and evil, as Nietzsche puts it, beyond something that grounds me to following certain set of rules. To be free is to be spiritually free, freedom of spirit. But back to the topic at hand. The concept of freedom was slowly developed in this Roman Greek ethos and in Catholic ethos. Uh, that that Hegel notes there that the Orientals have not attained the knowledge of the spirit, that man as such is free, and because of this, and because they did not know this, they were not free. They only knew that one is free, and that one is a despot. In the Greek in the Greek environment, there was only one person that governed everything, and that person has absolute freedom. That person was originally called a despot, and and the Romans and the Greeks knew that well, some people are free, while the German nations under the influence of Christianity were the first to attain the consciousness that man as a man is free, that is the freedom of the spirit which constitutes its essence, and that consciousness aroused in the religion in the utmost region of the spirit. And then Hegel further notes the Eastern nations knew only that one is free. The Greek and Roman world, the Greek and Roman world only that some are free. The while we know that all men are absolutely free as men, as we are supposed to be free. So that is the freedom of the spirit, because for Hegel, the spirit manifests itself to the state. This absolutely manifests itself to the state, and in democracy, which for Hegel is a necessary step in establishing freedom, is that every man is free. That's the democratic principle right there. But that also means that freedom has a burden. So, as Berdyaev notes while reflecting on suicide, uh, the suicide in his book in his article on suicide, to be human is a great task set before us by the Creator. To be human means to be a person, to be spiritually free, to grow in one consciousness, and to be a creator. And indeed, the greatest mystery of life consists in this, that everything within man has to be transcended by a higher condition, and therein presupposes the higher. Man has to become man by transcending himself, and as a person, it presupposes the existence of suprapersonal values of truth, of good, of beauty, of growth towards suprapersonal being. The consciousness presupposes the existence of supraconsciousness, where the soul both lives and breathes by the spirit and spiritual life. And man exists because God is, and because he can stir himself to move towards God. So basically, God gave the Creator God gave humans the ability to be free, because he willed humans to be free to make their own choices, and and that is why this freedom of spirit does not only relate in like being spiritually free, but being free to create, being free to be God's right hand, to be the co-creator with God. And that's why Berdyaev further explains that God expects from man the highest freedom, the freedom of the idea of creation. And he says this: God's expectation lays on man a great responsibility. The final and ultimate freedom, the daring of freedom, and the burden of freedom is the virtue of religious maturity. To arrive at religious maturity means to know final freedom. Final freedom in this case means to know that God is well a person that gave humanity freedom, a choice to be free, to select from good or bad, to do things, uh, to be good, because ultimately God is this supra personal value, uh, goodness, ultimate knowledge, and stuff like that. Uh, and then that also means that freedom has a creative nature to it. And in regards to the creative action, to this moral action, to following this established rules, he says the creative act has a moral significance. And a moral act is a creative act because the act of freedom also creates his own rules. And he says the true moral act is unique and it cannot be repeated. The moral act is not a fulfilling of the law of norms, but rather a creative newness in the world. Every creative act has moral significance. To this be creativity of cognitive or aesthetic values. Ethics is bound up with the eschatological problem, the problem of death and immortality, of heaven or hell. Further, in this text, he states that heaven and hell are just a form of human choice, whereas being in hell is a choice created by good for evil, and being in heaven is a choice being good for good. But heaven and hell are not in this world. This world is just a picture of the world that is to come, like just a foretaste of that world. So that's why he says in the end the kingdom of God is on the other side of here and now, beyond good and evil. While hell is kind of a constant. Hell is of all people's making, but there is a hell afterwards as well. But depending on the choices we make here, depending on the choices if we want to be creators, or we want to be the bringers of death. Uh, but that means that freedom also demands of man to be free, and that also means that a free man is also a tragic man, because the free life is the most complex, while the easy life is that which is subject to its end and necessity. Freedom entails suffering and tragedy. And furthermore, if we abandon freedom, the abandonment of freedom brings with it an apparent relief on the suffering tragedy of life. So to be free is also it also means to suffer greatly, because freedom has consequences, and each consequence bears a terrible responsibility for the world around us. If you don't want to be responsible, then just follow the rules, and act according to society, and everything will be fine, because somebody else will think for you. Somebody else will just make up your time, and they will they will just take everything you have, and you will just fall into this cycle of necessities, of this unlife. But while life is a form of tragedy, is a form of suffering. To be alive is to suffer. To be alive is to make choices every single day, and demand that demand your right to be free, in a way. It's freedom of the spirit. Uh, so that also means that freedom is not, as Hegel maintained, the creature of necessity, because in Hegel's philosophy, as I mentioned, there is a spirit that manifests itself through history, and the absolute manifestation of this spirit is democracy, where by necessity the spirit needed to reveal himself in order for man to be free politically and spiritually. And that's why Berdyaev here argues about it, and he says that freedom is just the reverse from what Hegel taught. Necessity is the creature of freedom, and freedom and free creative act creates necessity, because if we do not do nothing, if we just sit around being lazy, there is just nothing necessary to be done, and everything else falls apart around us, and we are falling in kind of a sinful state of being lazy, of being neglected, of being I don't know. Uh, well, well, yeah. Anyway, the origin of the world springs from from freedom willed by God in the beginning. Without His will or longing for freedom, no world process would be possible. In its place, there would be a static and preeminent perfect kingdom as an essential and predetermined harmony. And that is exactly what I wanted to say, uh, which I couldn't say, is that if we do nothing, then everything would just be perfectly still. Nothing would happen. There is no necessary action. There is no necessary reaction. There would be no life. There would be only a perfect stillness. Uh, and that's why we have to think about freedom as being responsible, because in such a context everybody bears a terrible responsibility. He either affirms life, renewal, and hope, or else he affirms death, disintegration, and despair. And and that is also why through freedom, through suffering, through our creative act, towards our movement to be free, for humans just to be uh, spiritually satisfied. Uh, we need to kind of go through this suffering and act upon it, and just like be called to be active, because the emotional suffocation and loss of the meaning of life will be overcome. It is realized that we live in an epoch of great crisis and upheaval, which is true for this day as well. That there ensues a new period of history. The old world has collapsed, and the new has just and the new yet unseen world is being created. That is true for today. We live in a time of crisis, and a new world out of that crisis has emerged, one unseen, which we are creating right now as we speak, each one of us. And he says, and each man is called to be an active participant in this process. Upon the spiritual power manifest by each depends the future. Spiritual power here means the creative act, not just the spiritual power of thought, but like the whole active participation of human beings in life. And that's why there is a need for a new ethics. And Berdyaev written this long ago. And he says three factors have appeared in moral life of man and are acquiring an amazing significance. Ethics must take account of three new objects of human striving. Man has come to love freedom more than he has ever loved it before, and he demands freedom with an extraordinary persistence. He no longer can or wants to accept anything unless he can accept it freely, which is true. Man has grown more compassionate than before. He cannot endure cruelty of the old days. He is pitiful in a new way to every creature, not only to the least of men, but also to animals and everything that lives. A moral consciousness opposed to pity and compassion is no longer tolerable. We see that. We experience that every day now, because we can no longer remain indifferent to the world around us. We need green policies. We need something that ties into the environment, that's eco-friendly, that doesn't hurt us or any other creature. And finally, man is more eager than ever before to create. He wants to find real justification and meaning for his creativeness. He can no longer endure having his creative instincts repressed either from without or within. And that brings us to the regard for creation. Because if we take account this new ethics, this compassion, this search for freedom, this search for religious justification, freedom needs to be in regards not only to fulfilling what God's wants, but as well what man wants, because human beings are created in the image of God. And it's not only God's revelation to man, but also man revelation in God. For it is the source and origin of movement, of process of inner conflict and inwardly experienced contradictions. And that is why everything has to go to this tragedy, because God does not want for human beings to be indifferent towards creation. He wants us to be his co-creators, the guardians of creation, the ones that are uh, not only guarding our fellow humans, but also guarding the Garden of Eden, the world around us, the whole world. We need to take responsibility and action for the whole world around us. Not only not only our small worlds, but like the entire planet, the entire human race. And that means that the only real sin is to miss the mark of life. The only choice human beings face, their freedom, is to dwell in life or abandon what is real for which steps outside of creation, outside the world of loving communion. And here, Goa affirms what Berdyaev is talking about. uh, because Goa is talking about uh, the communion, the Eucharist, the participation of all beings in creation, the gratitude we have for not only being created, but that we can create ourselves, that we can be uh, God's co-creators, that we can be as gods in a way. That not just that be as gods, but like that we are destined to look God in the face, and that we one day will uh, you know be responsible for our dues with God, and that He will judge us according to the things that we do, and He wants us to be free and to be creative, and that's why, in a way, humans are responsible for eternity. But I will not get into the topic of eternity because I'm writing a PhD on it, and being responsible for eternity will just be a too much now. But I want to give a quotation about Berdyaev because I think uh, this matters. This particular quotation matters because it has become impossible any longer to still remain lukewarm, to be a normal Christian, or half pagan. It is necessary to make choices, to show a capacity for sacrifice, to become spiritually intense. There is occurring in the world an enormous struggle for Christian and anti-Christian forces, and no one can evade participating in it. We live in a very difficult but quite more interesting time than in the periods preceding. Much of the old is gone and has inevitably passed away, irreversibly passed away. That means that as today, with the COVID crisis and with everything that's coming our way, the old world is gone. One whole section of life is gone. One whole history is gone. Because if you look 20, 20 years in the past, you will see how much things have changed. We are not the same anymore, and it's irreversibly in the past. And the old life will never return, and it is in vain to wish for this. But we can still live for the future because human beings are beings that project themselves in the future. This creative impulse projects us in the future. Responsibility for what comes ahead for not only us now, but for future generations of human beings, for the whole planet. Something that we leave behind and leave behind. But there has awakened a new interest in the world and human life, an interest for the heights and for the depths, from God and through God, from the perspective of eternity. We receive the possibility to look upon time and to assert eternity in time, to do God's will, to assert eternity, to do things that we must do as creators, not as a human beings that we must do, not as human planning of human evolution, transhumanism, uh, globalist policies that we are a part of today, but as individual beings that are separate from the collective, as as the creators themselves, as the ones who have a mandate to do creation, to have a mandate to be free from the world, to just spring up and go, to fly. And because we are meant to fly, we are not meant to be dragged down in shackles and just spend our lives within this small world of necessity, I would say. Uh, and he says now is not the time to lose courage, to fall apart, to give away to despair. Now is the time to pull oneself up, to get oneself together, and and a time to believe and to hope, and a time to remember that man is a spiritual being foreordained for eternity. My lecture is over. Thank you for your attention, and I hope to see you. Thank you very much.